Now, coming back to the CDP, I just want to mention that, I mentioned the whole issue of supply chains. Now, the big companies have gigantic supply chains. Sometimes hundreds of thousands of SMEs are in the supply chains. And these same big companies have made commitments under the CDP program, the Carbon Disclosure Project. And they've made commitments like, we want to be carbon zero by such and such a date, 2030, 2040, 2050, etc. Different companies have chosen different dates. And the reality is that sometimes 70%, 80% of all their emissions is with their suppliers. So they've dealt with their own emissions first, and now in the last couple of years, they've started to look at the emissions of their suppliers. And this is a complex issue because the suppliers are organized in tiers, tier 1, tier 2, tier 3, all the way down to the farmers in terms of textile and food companies. And as we know, the farmers are not quite participating in the carbon economy until now. This is probably going to change quite dramatically in the coming years. But the point about it is that if I'm a small company and if I get a letter from my big client telling me that my emissions are its problem and that they want me to explain to them what am I doing to reduce my emissions, at that stage, I have an existential problem on my hands. So the whole question of, how much do I spend on doing an audit, whether or not I act upon the recommendations of the audit, all of those questions go out the window. We're dealing with an existential threat to the company. And this should be an issue of interest, not only to the company, but also to managers in public administration who look after the health of the economy. They need to make sure that their businesses are paying attention to this and acting on this, because if they don't, it could mean an end to the company and loss of jobs for the economy in the future. So anyway, one of the companies that has looked at this is Unilever. You might know Unilever. It's a gigantic company with huge supply chains. It's been challenged like many companies recently because of the COVID crisis. And they gave a presentation recently about their COVID response. And as part of this presentation, they point out that, listen, guys, COVID is just one of a series of crises that we have to deal with. There's an economic recession coming down the line. There's also the issue of climate change. And look at the big wave behind this. It's all about biodiversity, a threat in the collapse of biodiversity. Now, the point is that if these are the threats that all of the big companies have to deal with, they will be asking the small companies in their supply chain to address these threats. And that means requiring them not only to act upon issues such as energy efficiency and the switch to renewables, but also on issues such as biodiversity as well. So the point is that we need to recognize that small companies are going to be under pressure to act on a range of issues in the coming years. And only one of those will be energy efficiency. There's a whole range of other things that they will have to act on. And so we need to view the strategic needs of small companies from this broader perspective if we're to get action.